All right, let's go down to Tallahassee and talk some offensive line recruiting. Alex Atkins and the FSU staff are getting to it, so we're going to bring in Michael Langston from Warchant, talk about some of these top targets in the trenches on the offensive side of the ball. But first, FSU fans, do me a favor, hit subscribe to the On3 Recruits channel. We talk FSU recruiting all offseason long. Go on, jump on board, hit subscribe for me, please. All right. Let's bring on Michael Langston from Warchant. Now, we're going to start with some of the big dogs right now. Josh Petty, he made a visit in April to Florida State. He's from the state of Georgia, the number 2 rated interior offensive lineman in America. FSU already has the number 1 ranked interior offensive lineman committed to them, but they're after Josh Petty. I kind of feel like this is a bit of a long shot here, but where do the Noles stand?
Yeah, they got a visit in the spring. Really, captured his attention. I think moved up a lot. The communication I've heard picked up a lot ever since that visit. Clemson's kind of the team I've heard a lot, Josh, on that recruitment. But I think FSU certainly made a move. I think really the official visit's going to be big, and it's interesting. I think its official is on the June 21st weekend, which is really the one I've circled. That's like their major big weekend, official visit weekend. So he's going to be around other commits. He's going to be get the experience more of a player stuff, where this one was more about getting to know coaches, being around, just the way they do things as far as, their team. But I do think they made a good surge. I think that they're a team that is certainly in the mix. But as you mentioned, yeah, I do think there's still work to do.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I'd categorize a long shot, but I would say there's work to do as far as the recruitment, because others have gotten them on campus a little more. But overall, I think FSU definitely put themselves in the picture. I think with Josh Petty, and certainly one of the top offensive linemen in the country. I think really it's just what's going to happen in that official visit, the connection he hits with the players, and the connection he hits with just the program itself, because he'll get to see the full aspect of FSU, which I don't think he's really done.
All right. Now, the next 2 prospects I want to talk about are both from the state of Florida. Zire Addison, he's out of the Tampa area. And then you got Max Buchanan, who's from Sanford, Florida, more of the Central Florida area. Zire Addison, he's been taking a lot of visits, but FSU with a slight lead on the RPM right now. And Max Buchanan is a riser in the state of Florida. A lot of teams taking notice, especially Florida State. Who do you feel right now is more of a priority for Alex Atkins and the Noles?
I think they're, from a priority standpoint, they're pretty close. They're both really high up there. Addison, for those that don't follow, FSU was the first to offer him in a camp. Ever since then, there's been such a strong connection with Atkins. He's taken a lot of other visits, but there's a connection with FSU that I think is very unique compared to, you see him visit other schools. Not that I follow a lot of what kids do on social media, but when he visits FSU, there's a lot of social media activity, and this the way he talks about FSU on those visits is extremely high. So I think they sit in a pretty good spot, or a good spot at least right now, even though there's a lot of competition. I still like their chances, and then Max is kind of the guy that I've heard that's probably the most coveted guy.
Yeah.
Out of anybody. Can play a lot of different positions. They love his versatility. They love the mentality he plays with. He's been to FSU several times. That's a place where he was at the Seminole Showcase a year ago. He's always there, and I think they also sit good with him. But I think Max overall is probably the top guy that I've heard the most, and he's also going to be visited for that. I think that June 21st weekend. So they're really putting everything into that 21st weekend. There's a ton of guys, that are visiting for that 21st weekend from the offensive line. I think Ty Haywood is another one that's a 5-star that he's also visiting. So they're putting a lot of effort. It's kind of a risk reward type thing, but if you can knock it off and you can get what you want, then certainly they can pull it off. But I think both of those guys you mentioned, Josh, I think they sit in a good position currently where they're at.
All right. Now, the next guy we're going to talk about, I know he's sitting in a good position for Florida State. That's interior offensive lineman Payton Joseph, because he just recently decommitted from the Florida Gators. He's from Fort Valley, Georgia, but is trending heavily toward the Noles. Is this one that they can close out on soon?
Yeah, I would think if I was picking a next guy, that would be my next guy. I know me and Josh have kind of talked and agreed somewhat with that. I think the tricky thing's just going to be, what they do with the interior because there's so many guys. So you got to be careful of how hard you push for. So that's kind of the challenge they got. But I do think if he was the next guy, he would be, for me, be the next guy. He's very close to Terrence Ferguson, who's already on the team. Stayed 5 days at FSU when he was originally only going to stay like 1 or 2 days. And you just felt like there's a connection there. That's what is very unique. But also, I mean, people forget like early in the process with his recruitment, FSU was like the for sure said it done high leader, and he took a visit to Florida, and then it took off with Florida. But then once Florida's out of the picture, and then you go off that visit, usually if you follow the visits and kind of the trends of what happened, you kind of sense FSU's in a pretty strong spot.
Yeah, it definitely feels like it's going in the Knowles direction with that one. Now, Micah DeBose, I want to talk to you. He's the last kind of uncommitted guy I want to talk to you about. About 5 or 6 months ago, I didn't think Florida State was even in the conversation with DeBose. He was committed to Georgia, then he decommits, then it's Auburn. It looks like he might commit to Auburn at any moment coming off that decommit from Georgia. Doesn't happen. Then he starts trending to LSU, but LSU picks up a couple offensive line commitments, and now it sounds like Micah DeBose and FSU is beginning to heat up. What do you got here?
Yeah, they're definitely heating up. Alex Atkins went to see him this past week. That's a guy that he's obviously heavily targeted. It's
Yeah.
another one what I talk about with the interior where you got to be sure of which guy that you prioritize, and I think he's another guy that I think you'll see an official visit for. Certainly, he took a visit in the spring, really connected with Atkins, and even then, even when there wasn't a lot of talk about FSU, early on in that recruitment in the spring, he visited a few times to FSU. This visit was a little bit different, where he had his family with him. You could tell how much his mom and his other people in their family were enjoying the connection that he has with Atkins. So certainly, I think they are a heavy player. I'm not ready to just put
Yeah.
them in there that they're the favorite, but I definitely think they're trending in a good direction based on his recruitment and based on the pickup of communication between not just Atkins and but DeBose too. DeBose hits them up a lot. Communications, you I follow the visits, but I also follow just the communication of how that rises, and it certainly has rose a considerable amount with a guy like Micah DeBose. So he's one I'm keeping an eye on. I still think it is LSU and FSU as far as the teams I hear.
Mm-hmm.
Despite LSU adding some guys, I think those are the two teams I hear the most, but FSU is definitely the team that I hear trending, at least lately, the most.
Yeah, and when we talk about FSU's offensive line class, the foundation that it's all built on is Solomon Thomas. He's a 5-star, the number one interior offensive lineman in America, and he's been committed to FSU since December. So now that we've established he's the foundation of the class, is he going to stick? Because the problem is he's been taking visits, Mike.
Oh yeah, yeah, and he said like, look, I'm going to go through the recruiting process. FSU gets the last summer visit. I was there, I think on Thursday. We had a really good talk with Solomon, just talking about the different things. But he is one of the unique players where when I say that is like most kids are like, hit me up. I want to have love, show me interest. I want you to call me all the time. I want to, from a variety of schools where Solomon's not like that. Solomon's like more like if you don't hit him up, just hit him up occasionally and they talk occasionally. He even told me like 3 weeks he hadn't talked to really that many people. I think Alex Atkins was the main guy that he had talked to. So he's not the guy that craves kind of that recruiting, I guess love or whatever, but he is going to take visits because he said, look, you only go through this process one time, you're going to experience it. He's got official visits to LSU and Florida. I think it's in that order, and then Florida State will be the last one in the summer. And I got the sense, Josh, that if everything clicks and nails, and Solomon kind of hinted at this, that I could see him closing down things in that
Yeah.
summer if FSU nails like they want to. There's a long time relationship, just like with like Addison. FSU offered him like as a freshman at a camp. The relationship's been really tight, but it's also outside of football. Solomon said some really interesting things when I went over there. He talked about NIL and how a lot of people promise this and promise that, but Alex is more just a father thing where, yeah, you're going to get that, but you're also going to get this other stuff where there's a connection outside of football that's just different with FSU. So I would lean towards right now. I'm feeling pretty good about him sticking just
Mm,
based on your early indication. I know Miami made a nice push when he visited there. That's the team that probably is their bigger threat.
yeah.
That's probably the biggest threat, even though they're not listed in that group. I think they're probably the biggest threat for me. You go back to different things that really are important to the prospect, and I think relationships is a major thing with Solomon. It's not so much glitz and glamour it or development all the time. I think he wants those things, but I think it's relationships are a big deal. And I think with Alex, I don't think anybody has a better relationship. But they're still going to have to work. He's going to take visits. When kids take visits, that means they're open in certain level. So
Yeah.
they'll have to work and finish it off. But I think it's in a good position of where they're at. I think I would say probably like 3 weeks ago, FSU was a little bit concerned with that Miami visit of how it went, but as time has gone on, I think they feel good about their position.
All right, FSU fans, talk to me. How are you feeling? Comment section below. How do you think this offensive line class is going to work itself out? Who's your top target? Let me know. Comment section below. Well, you've made it to the end of today's video, but there's hundreds more videos on the On3 Recruits channel for you to check out. And also, while you're here, hit subscribe.